Hello fans and friends, welcome to another video. My name's Keir Smith. For today's video, I'm going to take you through my own personal journey with the big six of progressive rock. I've been listening to a lot of progressive rock music over the last few months, and this was partly inspired by Scott Lade's excellent YouTube channel, The Prog Corner. And this phase of musical interest started a few months back when I revisited Scott's favourite album of all time, Tales from Topographic Oceans by Yes. And after finding a new appreciation for that album, I went back and listened to some of those early Genesis albums that I'd not given much attention to, like Foxtrot and some early Emerson, Lake and Palmer albums, and so on. And Scott also made a video some time ago where he listed 6 bands that he considered to be the big six of prog. And those bands were Yes, King Crimson, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Jethro Tull, Genesis, and Pink Floyd. And I imagine that most progressive rock fans would agree that these 6 bands are the big six of prog. And so I thought it would be interesting to show and tell you what my first album was by these bands and what my current favourite album is by these bands, where I started my prog journey and where I'm currently at. And I'll talk a little bit about each band as I go through this list, and I'll also rank the bands from least favourite to favourite. That said, I do like all of these bands, but obviously we all have our favourites. At number 6, it's Jethro Tull. My first album by Jethro Tull was Aqualung, but my favourite album by Jethro Tull is Thick as a Brick. I really like Aqualung. I was listening to it the other week and I was really impressed by the amount of good riffs on that album. I'd not heard the album for at least a couple of years, but those 2 sidelong epics on Thick as a Brick have always impressed me. Fantastic instrumentation throughout, and that's my favourite Jethro Tull album. I only own 3 albums by Jethro Tull: Aqualung, Thick as a Brick, and I bought a Passion Play last year, which I haven't got to grips with yet, I must admit. And it took a while for me to warm to Ian Anderson's voice, but it's growing on me. But I didn't necessarily rush out and buy all of Jethro Tull's albums, maybe for that reason. Although after listening to Aqualung and Thick as a Brick again recently, I did order Heavy Horses, one of their later 1970s albums, from eBay, so I'm looking forward to receiving that. Ranked at number 5 is Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Now, my first album by Emerson, Lake and Palmer was Brain Salad Surgery, and it's still my favourite album by the band. Jerusalem is a fantastic opener. Toccata makes your head spin, but very impressive, and Still You Turn Me On, absolutely fantastic. Benny the Bouncer is a bit of an odd inclusion here, but I rather like it, and Carnival 9 is a brilliant piece of progressive rock music. All 3 impressions, grand, ambitious, superb. I'm a fan of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. There's so much talent in that group. Keith Emerson, a wizard on keyboards, Carl Palmer, a fantastic drummer, and Greg Lake has a fine voice. But I don't know all of their back catalogue that well. I listened to Emerson, Lake and Palmer, the debut album, and Trilogy again recently. I only bought Tarkus on LP second hand about 6 months ago, so I need to give that some more listening time for sure. I've got Works Volume 1, though I need to give that another listen. I don't have Works Volume 2, and I bought Love Beach on record again a few months back second hand, but I need to give that another listen too. At number 4 is The Mighty King Crimson. My first album was In the Court of the Crimson King, but my favourite album is Locks, Tongues in Aspic. In the Court of the Crimson King is widely regarded as the first prog album. And of course, I really like this album. 21st Century Schizoid Man is brilliant, a great album opener. I love the final song on the album, the title track, but probably my favourite song is the beautiful Moonchild. But Locks, Tongues in Aspic is special, especially the title track, those 2 pieces of music that bookend this album. They are fantastic. The way that the pieces move from a serene calmness 1 minute to a manic, crazy, end of the world feel the next. It's really impressive. But Easy Money is my favourite song on the album. That is an incredible groove. Book of Saturday is really nice. The Talking Drum, Exiles, it's all good. As many fans will know, King Crimson went through some kind of lineup change almost with the release of every album. But at the core is Robert Fripp, the brains and vision of the group. But I only own 5 albums by King Crimson. I was certainly a latecomer to this party. I've got In the Court of the Crimson King, Islands, Larks, Tongues and Aspic, Beat and Thrack, although I must admit I don't know Beat and Thrack that well. Again, I need to go back and listen to them. And I must get round to buying the album Red. I've heard great things about that, and apparently it was one of Kurt Cobain's favourite albums. At number 3 is Genesis. Now, my first album by Genesis was And Then There Were Three, but my favourite album by Genesis, which will surprise some, is We Can't Dance. I remember seeing the music video for Follow You, Follow Me on a music channel called VH1 in the late 90s, and I knew Phil Collins as a solo artist, but after seeing that video, I of course realised he was in a band. And I listened to And Then There Were Three, and I quite liked it. I thought it was good, but I put it down and didn't listen to it for years really. I much preferred Phil Collins' solo stuff that I was hearing. But We Can't Dance is a fantastic album. I don't care what anybody says. Fading Lights and Driving the Last Spike, the 2 long pieces on the album, are absolutely brilliant. No Son of Mine is a brilliant song. Jesus He Knows Me, I Can't Dance were both big hits, very likeable. And Dreaming While You Sleep could be my favourite Genesis song. I think it's absolutely fantastic. A really great vocal from Phil Collins too. Tell Me Why, Living Forever, Hold On My Heart, Since I Lost You. Great songs. Now, I do appreciate that this may seem like sacrilege to some fans out there, because it seems to me that Genesis is divided into 2 camps. You've got the Peter Gabriel era and the Phil Collins era. I don't know the Peter Gabriel era that well, but I've gone back and listened to them earlier Genesis albums like Nursery Crime, Foxtrot and Selling England by the Pound, and I've really enjoyed listening to them recently. And the Genesis lineup of Gabriel, Hackett, Rutherford, Banks and Collins was a stellar group, no doubt about it. I've got all of the Genesis albums bar the first 2, is it From Genesis to Revelation, and the second one being Trespass, of course. So of course they're on the wish list, and I must give some more time to The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, because admittedly I've probably only listened to that album maybe once all the way through since I bought it some 10 years ago. So yeah, a lot of love for Genesis. Great band, both eras. It's just that at this point I might still be siding with the Phil Collins era. Don't shoot me all at once. At number 2 is Yes. My first album by Yes was Fragile, but my favourite album by Yes, and again this may come as a surprise to some, is Going for the One. Fragile is an album that has grown on me through the years. It's an album I've always liked, but maybe when I bought it I wasn't quite ready for it, if you know what I mean. The band pieces on this album are stellar. The album is bookended by the brilliant Roundabout and Heart of the Sunrise, 2 incredible pieces of music. And of course, Long Distance Runaround and South Side of the Sky are both very good. But when I first got the album, I was rather let down, I think, by the solo pieces on this album, although I really like Mood for a Day, The Fish and We Have Heaven Now. And there's only 5 tracks on Going for the One, but not a note is wasted on that album. I think that album is perfection. The title track that opens the album rocks. John Anderson's vocals are superb, and Steve Howe's guitar playing here is just incredible. Turn of the Century is a gorgeous and very touching ballad with a rather moving story to it, and Parallels seems to come in for some stick when people discuss the highs and lows of this album, but I think it's brilliant. The instrumentation and the chemistry between the band on this song is remarkable. And Wondrous Stories is a lovely song and a rare hit for the band, but the last song on the album, the 15-minute epic that is Awaken, is fantastic. And like many great Yes epics, Awaken shifts through moods, styles and tempo, but I love every second of this track, and it always leaves me feeling quietly euphoric. But I must say, the album Close to the Edge is a very close second, no pun intended, to Going for the One. I'd go as far to say that yes, that classic lineup of the 70s is possibly the most talented band I've ever heard. John Anderson, Steve Howe, Chris Squire, Rick Wakeman, and whether it's Bill Bruford or Alan White on drums, they are incredible. And I'm still missing a few Yes albums from their back catalogue. They've done so many over the years, largely from the 1980s onwards, like Big Generator, Talk, Fly From Here, The Quest, and their most recent one, Mirror to the Sky. And I also don't have Time and a Word, which was one from the late 60s. So there's a few more albums for me to pick up there, but make no doubt about it, I love Yes. They are absolutely brilliant. But that run of albums, especially from 1971's The Yes album to 1978's Tormato, is a breathtaking run of albums. And despite the many lineup changes, they continued to make great music after that period. Drama from 1980 was great. 1983's 90125 was a really good album. And from their later works, I really like the albums Magnification and, in particular, The Ladder, which is excellent. But coming in at number one, my favourite band from the Big Six of Prog is Pink Floyd. And my first album by Pink Floyd was, rather unsurprisingly, The Dark Side of the Moon. But my favourite album by Pink Floyd is, surprisingly, wait for it, The Final Cut. And of course, The Dark Side of the Moon is an incredible album, a rock masterpiece, one of the greatest albums of all time. Everything that you've read or you've heard that's been said about this album, it's all true. It's incredible. I often cite the song Time as my favourite song of all time. But there's something about The Final Cut that resonates on a very deep level with me. And of course, this is a concept album about war, mainly World War II and the Battle of the Falklands. And Roger Waters' lyrics across this album detail in a very thoughtful and moving way the struggles of a soldier who returns home from the war. And Roger Waters isn't the greatest singer in the world, and some people have criticised his vocals on this album, but they're very affecting, and it was such a deep and personal issue for Roger that he had to sing these songs. But Dave Gilmour pops up with a great vocal on Not Now John with some blazing guitar work. And this album is home to, for me, some of Dave Gilmour's best guitar solos, like Your Possible Pasts, the Fletcher Memorial Home, and of course, the beautiful title track. Nick Mason is of course on drums, superb as always, although he doesn't play on the final track, Two Suns in the Sunset, and Richard Wright had been sacked by Pink Floyd, so he isn't on this album at all. And so some people dismiss this album as a Roger Waters solo album, but I don't subscribe to that point of view. Sure, he was more than taking the reins here, but Dave Gilmour, Nick Mason, Roger Waters, it's still Pink Floyd. And of course, they all contribute and help to create what is a breathtaking album, an incredible set of songs, a great concept, and this album continues to blow me away. It's been my favourite for a long time, and I don't think it'll ever get knocked off its perch. And I am a huge Pink Floyd fan. They're my second favourite band of all time. So as you would expect, I have all of their albums. There are no gaps in their back catalogue. Whether it's Syd Barrett, Dave Gilmour or Roger Waters leading the group, I love it all. So there you have it, the Big Six of Prog, where I started my journey with these bands and where I'm currently at. But I love all of these bands for very different reasons. They've all got a unique style and so much to offer. And I'm certainly looking forward to filling in the blanks for the gaps in their discographies. And of course, I'll post my next video very soon. I've got a few things coming up, so see you next time.